What if the biggest reason you haven't found the love you want has nothing to do with bad luck? What if it isn't because all the good people are taken? What if it isn't because dating apps are broken? What if it isn't because you're too old, too busy, too shy, or not attractive enough? What if the real reason has been inside your mind the entire time? Think about that for a moment. Because most people never do. Instead, they look outside themselves. They blame their ex. They blame modern dating. They blame society. They blame timing. And while some of those things may play a role, very few people stop and ask a much more uncomfortable question. What if I'm unconsciously creating the same result over and over again? Not because you want to, not because you're trying to fail, but because your brain is following a pattern you don't even realize exists. And that pattern may be shaping your entire love life. Have you ever noticed how some people keep attracting the same type of partner? Different face, different name, different city, but somehow the story always ends the same way. One person constantly attracts partners who are emotionally unavailable. Another keeps attracting people who need to be rescued. Someone else repeatedly falls for people who lose interest after a few months. And after enough disappointment, they begin to believe something is wrong with the world, or something is wrong with them. But what if neither is true? What if the real problem is that your brain has learned to expect a certain type of love, and because it expects it, it keeps finding it? At first, this idea sounds strange. Most people think love simply happens. You meet someone, you feel chemistry, you fall in love, and everything unfolds naturally. But the reality is much more complicated. Long before you meet someone, your brain already carries a set of expectations. Some of those expectations were formed when you were a child. Some came from your parents. Some came from your first heartbreak. Some came from experiences you barely remember, but they are there, quietly influencing what feels familiar. And here's something fascinating. The human brain often prefers what is familiar over what is healthy. Read that again. Your brain often prefers what is familiar over what is healthy. That means if chaos feels familiar, calm may feel boring. If rejection feels familiar, genuine affection may feel suspicious. If uncertainty feels familiar, stability may feel strange. Many people think they are searching for love, but without realizing it, they are often searching for familiarity. And those are not always the same thing. This is why someone can leave a toxic relationship, promise themselves they will never repeat it, and then somehow end up in another relationship that feels almost identical. The details change, the emotional experience does not. And when that happens enough times, people begin to lose hope. They start saying things like, all men are the same, all women are the same, nobody wants commitment anymore. Real love doesn't exist. But those beliefs create another problem, because the brain listens. Every belief you repeat becomes a filter. And once a filter is installed, your brain starts looking for proof. Imagine buying a red car. Before buying it, you rarely noticed red cars. After buying it, they suddenly seem to be everywhere. Did the world change? No. Your attention changed. The same thing happens in relationships. If you believe nobody is trustworthy, your brain becomes highly skilled at finding signs that support that belief. If you believe everyone eventually leaves, your brain becomes extremely sensitive to anything that feels like rejection. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin building a reality that matches your expectations. Not because you are manifesting magic, not because the universe is punishing you, but because your attention is shaping your behavior, and your behavior is shaping your future. The scary part is that most people never notice this process happening. They think they are observing reality, when in fact they are observing reality through a filter created years ago. And until that filter changes, the same story tends to repeat itself. But here's the good news. The fact that your brain learned these patterns means your brain can also learn new ones. And that may be the most important thing you hear in this entire video. Because your future relationships are not determined by your past. They are determined by what your mind continues to expect. And in the next part, we're going to explore why the brain becomes attached to painful relationship patterns, even when they make us miserable. Because the answer may completely change how you see love. Now, here's the question that surprises most people. If certain relationship patterns cause so much pain, Why does the brain keep repeating them? Why would someone continue attracting emotionally unavailable partners? Why would someone stay in relationships that make them unhappy? Why would a person repeatedly choose people who cannot give them the love they desperately want? At first glance, it doesn't make sense. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I hope I get my heart broken again. Nobody consciously chooses disappointment, and yet millions of people find themselves living through the same emotional story year after year. The answer is simpler than most people think. The brain is designed to keep you safe, not happy, safe. And those two things are not always the same. Most people spend their lives chasing happiness, but your brain's primary job is survival. Its mission is to predict what happens next, because prediction creates safety. The brain loves certainty, even when that certainty is painful. Think about that. A painful situation that feels familiar can actually feel safer to the brain than a healthy situation that feels unfamiliar. This is one of the most powerful truths about human behavior. The brain would often rather repeat a known pain than face an unknown possibility. Imagine someone who grew up feeling ignored. Maybe their parents were constantly busy. Maybe affection was rare. Maybe they learned very early that love had to be earned. As an adult, that person may genuinely want a loving and supportive relationship. But something strange happens. When they meet someone who gives them consistent attention, they may feel uncomfortable. Not because the person is wrong, because the experience is unfamiliar. Their brain doesn't recognize it. It doesn't match the emotional environment they grew up with. But when they meet someone distant, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable, something feels familiar. The emotional pattern matches an old memory. And the brain quietly whispers, "This feels normal." Most people mistake this feeling for chemistry, but chemistry and familiarity are not always the same thing. Sometimes what feels like intense attraction is actually recognition. The brain saying, "I've been here before." This explains why so many people repeatedly fall into the same types of relationships. They're not choosing the person, they're choosing the emotional pattern without even realizing it. And the more often a pattern repeats, the stronger it becomes. The brain is constantly building pathways. Every thought strengthens a pathway. Every emotional reaction strengthens a pathway. Every repeated experience strengthens a pathway. Eventually, these pathways become automatic. You no longer consciously decide how to respond. The response happens before you even think about it. You send the text, you become anxious, you overanalyze, you expect rejection, you pull away, you chase, you withdraw, and all of it feels natural. Not because it's healthy, because it's familiar. This is why some people can receive 10 compliments and still obsess over one criticism. The brain has already been trained to search for evidence that supports an old story. The same thing happens in love. A person may receive kindness, affection, loyalty, and support, but if their brain expects abandonment, it will remain focused on signs of danger. It will look for proof that something is about to go wrong. A delayed text message, a change in tone, a missed phone call, a busy day. Suddenly the mind starts creating stories. Maybe they're losing interest. Maybe they're talking to someone else. Maybe they're going to leave. Most of the time, none of those stories are true. But the brain isn't searching for truth, it's searching for certainty. And certainty often comes from old patterns. This is why expectations are so powerful, because expectations don't just influence what you think, they influence what you see. Imagine wearing glasses with a slight tint. After a while, you stop noticing the tint. It simply becomes your version of reality. Relationship expectations work the same way. You don't notice them, you simply experience life through them, and the longer they remain unconscious, the more power they have. The scary part is that expectations can become self-fulfilling. If you expect rejection, you may behave defensively. If you behave defensively, people may pull away. When they pull away, your belief appears confirmed. Then your brain says, "See, I was right." But the belief itself helped create the outcome. This cycle happens every day in relationships around the world, and most people never realize it. They think life is happening to them, when often their expectations are influencing the results they experience. Now, this doesn't mean every painful experience is your fault, not at all. People can betray you, people can lie, people can leave. Life is unpredictable. But what we're talking about here is something different. We're talking about the lens through which you experience those events. Because two people can experience the exact same disappointment and create completely different futures from it. One person says, "I knew nobody could ever love me." The other says, "That relationship wasn't right for me, but love is still possible." The event is the same, the expectation is different, and over time, those expectations lead to very different lives. This is why changing your future starts by changing what your brain expects. Not overnight, not through wishful thinking, but through awareness, because you cannot change a pattern you cannot see. And in the next part, we're going to uncover something even more important: the hidden program inside your mind that may have been quietly directing your love life for years without your knowledge. And once you see it, you may never look at relationships the same way again. By now, you may be starting to recognize something. Maybe the biggest influence on your love life isn't other people. Maybe it isn't luck. Maybe it isn't timing. Maybe it isn't even attraction. Maybe the biggest influence on your relationships is a program that has been running quietly inside your mind for years. A program you didn't consciously create. A program you probably never chose, but a program that may be influencing your decisions every single day. Most people believe they think freely. They believe every thought they have is their own. But if you slow down and pay attention, something interesting happens. You'll start hearing the same thoughts repeating again and again. The same fears, the same assumptions, the same expectations, the same stories. It's almost as if there is a narrator living inside your head, a narrator constantly explaining the world to you. The problem is that this narrator is not always accurate, and yet most people never question it. Imagine meeting someone new. They take a little longer than usual to reply to your message. Immediately, a thought appears. They're losing interest. You don't know if that's true. You don't have evidence, but the thought feels real, so you believe it. Then another thought appears. I knew this would happen. Then another. Nobody ever stays. And before long, your emotions begin responding to a story that may not even be true. This happens every day, not only in love, but in every area of life. The mind creates a story, the body reacts as if the story is reality, and eventually your behavior begins matching the story. This is why your inner dialogue matters so much, because the brain is always listening. Every time you repeat a belief, the brain treats it as important information. Every time you repeat a story, the brain strengthens it. Think about how often people say things like, "I always attract the wrong people." "Relationships never work out for me." "I'm always the one who gets hurt." "Love never lasts." At first, these statements seem harmless. They're simply describing past experiences. But after repeating them hundreds or thousands of times, they stop becoming observations. They become instructions. The brain begins organizing reality around them. It starts searching for proof. It starts noticing evidence. It starts filtering out anything that contradicts the story. And this happens automatically. You don't wake up and decide to do it. The brain does it for you. Imagine carrying a radio that's permanently tuned to one station. No matter where you go, that's the signal you hear. Many people spend years living this way emotionally. They're tuned to disappointment. They're tuned to rejection. They're tuned to fear. They're tuned to heartbreak. And because that's the signal they expect, it's the signal they notice most often. This doesn't mean good people aren't around them. It doesn't mean opportunities aren't there. It means their attention is locked onto something else. And attention is incredibly powerful. What you focus on grows in importance. What you repeatedly notice becomes your reality. Think about someone who enters every relationship expecting betrayal. Even if they meet an honest and caring person, they remain on guard. They are constantly watching, constantly analyzing, constantly searching for signs of danger. Eventually, the relationship begins feeling stressful, not because of what the other person is doing, because of what is happening inside their own mind. The hidden program keeps running, the hidden story keeps playing, and the longer it plays, the more convincing it becomes. This is why awareness changes everything. The moment you notice the program, you stop being controlled by it. You create space between yourself and the story. Instead of automatically believing every thought, you begin questioning it. Instead of saying, "Nobody will ever love me," you ask, "Is that actually true?" Instead of saying, "Everyone eventually leaves," You ask, do I know that for certain? Instead of accepting every fear as reality, you become curious about it. And curiosity is powerful because curiosity interrupts automatic thinking. Most people never pause long enough to question the voice inside their head. They assume the voice is telling the truth, but often the voice is simply repeating old information, information that may no longer be relevant, information that may have been created years ago, information that may have started with one painful experience and then expanded into an entire belief system. The truth is that many of the beliefs controlling your love life today were created long before your current relationship. Some may have formed when you were a child, some during your first heartbreak, some during moments of rejection that felt overwhelming. The brain took those moments and turned them into rules. Rules about love, rules about trust, rules about relationships, rules about yourself. And once those rules are installed, the brain tries to protect them, even when they are hurting you. This is why change can feel uncomfortable. You're not only changing behavior, you're changing identity. You're changing the story your brain has been repeating for years. But here's what most people never realize. The story is not who you are. The story is something you've been telling yourself. And stories can change. The moment you understand this, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of your past. You stop seeing your future as predetermined. You begin realizing that the expectations shaping your love life can be rewritten. And once that happens, everything starts to look different. The people you notice become different. The choices you make become different. The energy you bring into relationships becomes different. And slowly, your future begins changing as well, because the hidden program only controls your life until you become aware that it exists. And in the final part of this video, we're going to talk about exactly how to start changing that program. Not through positive thinking, not through pretending, but through a simple shift in awareness that can completely transform what you attract into your life. So now we arrive at the most important question. If your expectations influence your relationships, if your brain keeps repeating familiar patterns, if an old story has been quietly shaping your love life for years, how do you change it? Most people immediately search for a complicated answer. They think they need a completely new personality, a new dating strategy, a new relationship book, a new set of rules. But real change often begins with something much simpler: awareness. Because you cannot change what you do not see. Think about it. For years, your mind may have been running the same program without your knowledge. The program says, people always leave. Love never lasts. I'm not enough. I always get hurt. The problem is not that these thoughts appear. Every human being experiences negative thoughts. The problem begins when you automatically believe them. Most people never stop to question the stories inside their heads. They simply assume those stories are facts. But thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are possibilities, interpretations, predictions, and sometimes they are completely wrong. Imagine you're watching a movie. You know the difference between yourself and the screen. You can observe the story without becoming the story. Now imagine doing the same thing with your thoughts. Instead of immediately believing every fear, every doubt, and every prediction, you simply observe it. You notice it. You ask, is this actually true? That small question can change everything, because awareness creates distance, and distance creates freedom. For the first time, you stop reacting automatically. You stop letting old fears make new decisions. You stop allowing yesterday's pain to control tomorrow's possibilities. This doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen one thought at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of awareness at a time, and then something remarkable begins to occur. You start noticing opportunities you used to miss. You start recognizing healthy behavior. You start appreciating consistency instead of mistaking chaos for excitement. You start feeling comfortable with peace. And that is a major transformation, because many people spend years searching for love without realizing they first need to change their relationship with themselves. Think about the way you speak to yourself every day. Would you talk to someone you love the same way? Would you constantly criticize them? Would you constantly remind them of every mistake? Would you tell them they're not worthy of happiness? Probably not. Yet many people do exactly that to themselves. Then they wonder why confidence feels impossible. The relationship you have with yourself becomes the foundation for every other relationship in your life, because people often accept the love they believe they deserve, not the love they dream about, the love they believe they deserve. Read that again. That single idea explains more about relationships than most people realize. If deep down you believe you're not worthy of respect, you'll often tolerate disrespect. If deep down you believe you're not worthy of loyalty, you'll often accept less than you deserve. If deep down you believe you're not worthy of love, you'll struggle to recognize it even when it appears. This is why changing what you attract begins by changing what you believe about yourself. Not through empty affirmations, not by pretending, but by becoming aware of the stories you've been carrying and then slowly replacing them with healthier ones instead of "nobody ever stays." Try "the right people are capable of staying" instead of "I always get hurt." Try "I can learn from the past without expecting it to repeat" instead of "love never works for me." Try "my future does not have to look like my past." Notice the difference. These new beliefs aren't fantasy, they're possibilities, and possibilities create space for change. The truth is that your brain is always listening. Every thought you repeat becomes a signal. Every belief becomes a direction. Every expectation becomes a lens through which you see the world. That's why the love you experience tomorrow often begins with the expectations you hold today. Not because of magic, not because the universe is granting wishes, but because your expectations influence your attention. Your attention influences your behavior, and your behavior influences your future. This is how lives change. This is how relationships change. This is how people break free from patterns they thought would follow them forever. The moment you stop expecting the same story, you give yourself permission to create a new one. And maybe that's the message you needed to hear today. Maybe your future isn't waiting for the perfect person. Maybe it's waiting for a new expectation. Because the love you attract is often connected to the story you tell yourself about what is possible. So ask yourself one final question. If your current expectations disappeared today, what kind of love would you believe is possible? Think about that, because your answer may reveal the future you're already moving toward. And before you go, remember this. Many people spend years looking for the perfect person, the perfect relationship, the perfect love story. But the truth is that love doesn't begin the moment you meet someone. It begins long before that. It begins with the relationship you have with yourself. Because the way you speak to yourself becomes the standard for how others speak to you. The way you treat yourself becomes the standard for how others treat you. The way you value yourself becomes the standard for the love you accept. This is why some people remain trapped in painful patterns for years, not because they are unlucky, not because they are broken, but because they are still carrying an old story about who they are and what they deserve. And here's the secret most people discover too late. You do not attract the love you dream about. You often attract the love you believe you deserve. Think about that carefully, because changing your future isn't only about finding the right person. It's also about becoming the person who believes they are worthy of healthy love. The moment that belief changes, everything begins to change. Your choices change, your standards change, your confidence changes, and eventually, the relationships you attract begin to change too, because your brain is always listening. And every expectation you repeat becomes part of the future you're creating. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Soul and Science, like this video, and leave a comment below. Tell us, what is one belief about love that you're ready to leave behind? Because sometimes a new future begins with a single new thought.